The aim of this task is to split a given string into two different strings of equal size 3. So we have an example here. If we have like str and then we have a string passed in, dft ob71, we are going to have what I'm assuming is an array. So we would have an array that stores each of these that are 3 each, so dft ob7 and 1, and we can see that they're clearly all strings denoted by the double quotes. And then we have this example right here, so I believe after we store it, we're going to have to print it out as well. So what we're going to have here is a public static void main, super obvious, and then we have our input string. So the string is going to be stored into here, and then we are going to be using substrings. So the rest of this code is set up around substrings that we would use to solve this problem. We have a minimum and a maximum. We can see that the minimum is 0 and the maximum is 3. This is to correlate with the instructions where it says to split a given string into strings of equal size 3. So we're going to increment these by 3 every single time. We'll add 3 to them so that we get the next substring value. Then we're going to store the values into this string array, which I'm calling ARR. Now we need to set the length of this string because it's going to be different depending on the string that we store into our str. We're not hard coding it because that's bad practice. We want to make it very flexible for anything that we have in the future. So we have a conditional if statement. We're basically saying that we have our str.length modulus 3, so we get the remainder of it and we compare it to 0. If it's not equal to 0, we are going to set the length of our ARR, and the way we set our length is we just have it equal to a new whatever variable we have, and then we have these brackets, and then inside of the brackets we have an integer value. This integer value is going to be our str.length divided by 3, because we don't want to store the entire string length into our array. We don't need all those indexes, since each index is going to hold 3 characters. And so we need to divide this by 3, but if the remainder is greater than 0, that means we have more than just a 3. So we would have, like for this example, we have dft ob7 and then 1. So we would have to add another place for this 1 because it is not of 3. So we're going to add 1 to here. Now, if the str.length modulus 3 is equal to 0, meaning we don't have a remainder, so we would have like dft ob7, no 1, we don't need this extra place, so we would just set the length of it, of our array, to be the length divided by 3. So that's pretty much the longest part, setting the array length. Now we're going to break the string into substrings to put into our array. So again, we only want to do this, the length of our str, the string, divided by 3. We don't need to do it every single time because we are going to have the substring that breaks our string up into 3 characters. And then we're going to store those 3 characters. So for in a is equal to 0, a is less than our str.length divided by 3, and then we increment our a every single time. And then I have this sysout.println just to test it when I was running the code. But what we want to do is we want to have this array index. This index is going to be based off our a, and the a is the counter part for our for loop. It's going to increment every single time, meaning that we get a new index every single time. So at index 0, we are going to store the str.substring with our min as 0 or max as 3. So we're going to store dft in our array index 0. And then we're going to increment our minimum and increment our maximum. So we add 3 to both of them. Now on the second run of the for loop, when our a is equal to 1, we are going to store it at index 1. Our substring is now going to start at 3 and end at 6. And then we're going to continue this if we have any more. Now, if there's more than this, like our 1 right here, it's not going to count it, right? Because it's just divided by 3. So anything that we have after it, we're going to have to add into the last index. If there's more, we're going to go into this if statement, and it's basically the same condition as for this right here. So if our str.length modulus 3, so if there is a remainder, the remainder is not equal to 0, we're going to be inside of here, and we are going to have the index be the array length minus 1, because indexes start at 0 and lengths start at 1, so we need to subtract it to get the index. And this is going to be equal to the str.substring, where we take the minimum. And that's just how substrings work. There's a substring video, and that will be in a different video to save some time. Now for our printing, we're going to want it to look like this. So we aren't really done here. There's a few things that are of error. The first is that for this for loop, it's going to be fine. However, we have a print line here, so it's not going to print all in the same line. It's going to make a new line every single time this for loop runs. So we're just going to want to take out the ln and just make it a system.out.print, and that'll print it on the one line. Now, if we want it to look like this, we should append a space after all of these. There's multiple different ways we could do this, but here's the one that I chose to be the easiest. So what I'm going to want to do is append a space after every one of these. So in our sysout.print line, we can do a plus to append and then a double quotes with a space inside of here. Now, there is still an issue here though, and the issue is that we don't want a space after this last part. So what we can do is we can have a check in here. And our check is going to be that if our a, which is the kind of counter, the part that's incrementing, plus 1 is equal to our arr.length. So we're going to get the length of what we're doing here. And if it's equal to this, it means we're on the last one. So what we can just do from here, and we should put braces around all of this just to keep everything contained and make sure our code is just still going to run fine after this. But if this is correct, if our a.plus1 is equal to array.length, we are going to be inside of our if statement, and we want to do a system.out.print line, where we are actually not a print line because, again, we want to stay on the same line. Although this wouldn't affect anything, it would just add a line afterwards. But we have the sysout.print, and then we have parenthesis where we do our arr, and we want to get the last index. This is just going to be our a. So we do a, and then we can do a parenthesis, and then we can end this line. And then after this, we just want to return this, and we can end this line, and then we can end our if statement. So that's going to be it for our printing. Again, we're going to run this until we get to the very last one. This a+1 is going to set equal to our array.length. If that's true, we're just going to print this out without the space afterwards. And that'll get it to look exactly like this. And this is going to work for any string that we put inside of here. So that is how we would write this code, and that is how we would solve this problem.